Loving a stranger. The first time Evelyn met Daniel, he was standing in the rain without an umbrella, smiling like he'd invented storms. She remembered that smile more than anything. It wasn't just attractive, it was disarming. It made you feel like he knew something wonderful that you didn't yet, and if you stayed close enough, he might tell you. She had been standing under the awning outside the bookstore, clutching a paper bag filled with novels and a life she was quietly dissatisfied with. She was 29, practical, careful, and painfully good at choosing safety over magic. Daniel was magic. He noticed her watching him, and he walked over like the rain belonged to him.
You look like you're waiting for permission.
He said.
For what?
To step into your life.
She laughed, startled. No one had ever spoken to her like that, like she was a story worth reading. He asked her for coffee. She said yes. She would spend the next 6 years wondering if that moment had been fate or the first lie. Daniel loved her loudly. He left notes in her purse. He danced with her in the kitchen. He kissed her forehead when she cried over things she couldn't explain. He listened. That was the most dangerous part. He listened like every word she said mattered. He knew about her childhood, her fears, the way she sometimes felt like she was living someone else's life.
You deserve more.
He told her once, brushing hair from her face. She believed him. He proposed 2 years later on a quiet beach at sunrise. No crowd, no spectacle, just them.
I choose you.
He said, voice trembling. She chose him back. She didn't know then that choosing someone could also mean losing yourself. The first crack was small enough to ignore, a missing $50 from her purse. She assumed she'd spent it and forgotten. Daniel had been stressed. Work wasn't going well. He seemed tired, distracted. She told herself that's what love was. Understanding. The second crack was harder to ignore. He didn't come home one night. His phone went straight to voicemail. She stayed awake until 3 a.m, sitting on the couch, heart pounding with quiet dread she couldn't name. He stumbled in at 4:17 a.m. He smelled wrong. Not like alcohol, something chemical. His eyes were glassy, distant.
Where were you?
She asked.
Out.
He said. He smiled that same disarming smile. She wanted to believe it meant everything was okay. Instead, it meant everything was beginning to unravel. The lies multiplied. Small at first, then bigger. He lost his job.
They downsized.
He said. She found out later he'd stopped showing up. He became someone she didn't recognize, restless, irritable, absent even when he was sitting beside her. She asked him what was wrong.
Nothing.
He said, always, nothing. Love became guessing games. She learned to read his silences, the way he avoided her eyes, the way his hands trembled sometimes. She learned to swallow her questions because she was afraid of the answers. She found the first baggie by accident. It was hidden in the back of the bathroom drawer, beneath old receipts and a broken watch. For a moment, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Her brain rejected it. This didn't belong to her life. This didn't belong to Daniel. Her Daniel, the man who danced in kitchens, the man who chose her. Her hands shook. She waited for him to come home. When he did, she held it up. His face changed. Not surprise, not confusion, resignation.
How long?
She asked. He didn't answer.
How long, Daniel?
A while.
The world tilted.
Why?
He laughed. Not happily.
You wouldn't understand.
Try me.
He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something she'd never seen before. A stranger.
It makes everything quiet.
He said. She didn't know what he meant. She would learn. She stayed. That was the part she hated herself for the most. She stayed. Because he cried. Because he promised. Because he said he'd stop. Because she remembered the man in the rain. Because she loved him. Love became watching him disappear. Love became checking his pulse when he slept too deeply. Love became hiding her purse. Love became fear. But sometimes he was still Daniel. He'd hold her and whisper.
I'm sorry.
He'd make her coffee in the morning. He'd look at her like she was everything. Those moments kept her there. Those moments kept her hoping. Those moments broke her the most. The betrayal wasn't just the drugs. It was the lies, the manipulation, the way he made her feel like she was crazy for noticing.
You're overreacting. You're imagining things. You don't trust me.
She started to question herself. Maybe she was the problem. Maybe she wasn't enough. Maybe if she loved him harder, he'd come back. She didn't realize he was never really coming back. The night everything shattered, she woke to silence. A terrible silence. Daniel was lying beside her, too still. She knew, before she touched him. She knew. Her fingers trembled against his neck. There was a pulse. Faint. She called 911. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. They walked her through CPR resuscitation before finally arriving. She would never forget the feel of his constricted rib cage beneath her fingers. They took him away. She followed the ambulance, heart cracking open with every second. At the hospital, she sat alone in a plastic chair, waiting, waiting, waiting. She didn't know if she was waiting for him to live or for this nightmare to end. He survived, barely. The doctor used words like overdose and lucky. Lucky. She didn't feel lucky. She felt empty. He went to rehab. He promised this time was different. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him, but something inside her had broken. Trust didn't shatter all at once. It eroded, quietly, completely. 3 months later, she found the box. It was hidden in the closet, underneath old clothes. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Her name was written on each envelope, but she'd never seen them before. Her hands shook as she opened the first one. It was Daniel's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't fix myself. Her breath caught.
I'm sorry for everything.
Sorry. The words stared back at her, accusing. She opened another letter, and another, each one filled with apologies, regret, love. But something was wrong, very wrong. The dates, they weren't recent. They were from before they got married, before they got engaged, before the beach, before everything. Her heart pounded. She opened the last letter, and the truth fell out.
I never stopped using, not even when I met you.
Her hands went cold.
I tried to quit. For you. I really did. But I didn't want you to see who I really was. So I became someone else. Someone you could love.
She couldn't breathe. Was any of it real? The rain, the dancing, the choosing. Was it all a lie? Tears blurred her vision.
I loved you the only way I knew how. Even if it wasn't enough. Even if it wasn't honest. Even if it wasn't real.
She dropped the letter. Her entire relationship collapsed in that moment. He hadn't become a stranger. He'd always been one. When Daniel came home from rehab, he looked healthier, clearer, hopeful.
I'm clean.
He said. She stared at him. This man she loved. This man she didn't know.
I found the letters.
She said. His face went pale. Silence filled the space between them.
You knew.
She whispered. He nodded. Tears filled his eyes.
I didn't want to lose you.
You never had me.
She said. Her voice broke.
You had someone who loved a version of you that didn't exist.
He cried. She didn't. She had no tears left. The tragedy wasn't what he'd done. It was what she realized next. She had known, not consciously, not fully, but somewhere deep inside, she had known. All those moments that felt slightly off, all those instincts she ignored, all those questions she silenced. She had chosen him anyway. She had chosen the illusion because she loved who he could be, not who he was. And that was her betrayal of herself. She left him, not because she didn't love him, but because she finally loved herself more. He didn't fight her. He knew. Some things couldn't be fixed. Some truths couldn't be undone. Years later, she would still think about him when it rained. She would still remember the man who smiled like he'd invented storms. She would still wonder which parts of him were real. Maybe all of them. Maybe none of them. Love didn't have to be honest to feel true. That was the cruelest part. One night, long after the divorce, she found the last letter again. She had kept it. She didn't know why. At the bottom, there was something she hadn't noticed before. A single sentence.
I hope someday you realize you saved my life.
She stared at it, and for the first time, she understood. She hadn't imagined everything. He had loved her, in his broken way, in his dishonest way, in his human way. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere in the rain, some version of him had been real.